Hello everyone, this is Arrow, and welcome back to Sundown Moon Up Podfics. Today we're going to be continuing Shouta Aizawa is caught horribly underprepared by Hollow Block 07. Chapter 15. The green bean loves his mother bean very much. Summary. Shouta, Izuku, and Izashi all discuss Izuku's living situation in relation to their concerns for his safety. Shouta had been dreading this conversation since he realized he needed to have it with the kid. It was necessary to ensure Izuku's safety, but he would have to upturn his kid's entire world to do anything permanently, which would probably upset Izuku, which he really did not want to do, at all, ever. He confided to Hisashi everything he'd seen and experienced while following his kid around as a cat, as they sat beside the sleeping Greenette. He'd had to enjoy to watch the inactive volcano that was his husband's anger flare and spit, righteous and deadly up close. God, he's hot when he's angry. It was nice to share the protective flame he had for this kid with his husband. It would make his potential pitch for their futures all the more easy. There is something I wish to address with you, Midoriya.
Oh, feel free to call me Izuku. I don't mind.
The kid grinned awkwardly, teeth flashing, and his own lips involuntarily curled at the sight. Then you can know my civilian name is Shouta Aizawa. He nodded in a small motion of acknowledge the respect he had earned and given, but moved on, pretending he wasn't proud that he'd been trusted by this kid. I want to discuss your mother, Izuku. The Greenette flinched, looking up at him with uncertain eyes, some sort of dull emotion fighting behind them. Interesting. While I was with you, I noticed she was not there very often, and that she would even spend several days away from home, despite the fact that she has a minor living there by himself. His kid curled up further and further, and if Shouta knew his kid would be okay, he would drop this immediately just to know he wouldn't have to do this to Izuku. But he couldn't be sure, and uncertainty could kill. You also received several injuries, second-degree burns, concussions, sprains, bruises, broken bones. All were incredibly serious, and you handled them yourself. Your mother was only home once when you were visibly injured, to my knowledge, and she did nothing to care for them. The Greenette's face contorted in denial, desperate to defend his mother for neglecting him, but just not being able to verbalize it quite right.
She's always so busy, and she keeps us afloat. I've always weighed her down by being quirkless. We're denied access to some stores. Shoes aren't designed for me, so she needs to buy custom ones. Her social life was impacted. She has so much on her plate. She doesn't need any more of my problems to deal with. Right, Racer? Aizawa, I mean.
Shouta pursed his lips, keeping his expression hidden in his capture weapon. This kid, this selfless, reckless child, he is going to be the death of me. That's her job as your mother, little listener. She is supposed to care for you, to support you. She may struggle, and while she may need help, it is not your job to lighten your mother's load. Hisashi glowed with conviction and utter truth, and as much as Izuku was wincing, his husband's assuredness was swaying him. You shouldn't have to sacrifice being a kid and asking for help over moments of relief for your mother. There are places to get help if she needs it. Tears erupted from Jade eyes, their kid's resolute stance crumpling at hearing such soft and sure words.
She's not bad. I love her. She's my mom.
What she did was wrong, but she's not bad, Izuku. We aren't saying that. We're saying that we think you aren't safe living with her, and that she isn't providing adequate care. Shouta just needed to break the camel's back. Just get on with it. He ran his tongue along his teeth as he watched the Greenette absorb what he said, tasting copper. Must have bit it earlier by accident.
I'm safe with her.
She's never around to make you feel safe and doesn't help you when she is. You could potentially go home with a lethal injury one day, and she would either be too tired or unavailable to help you, kid. You could die and not be discovered for days while living with her."
"That wouldn't happen."
Izuku was practically sobbing, breaths deep and labored, cheeks damp and red. "It's very well could. Your classmates do not know when to stop, as shown by yesterday. You could have been killed today if the quirk that made me a cat hadn't worn off in time for me to help." That was true. He had been incredibly lucky that the stress of the situation had caused the quirk to wear off in time to help his kid. However, something wasn't sitting quite right with him. Maybe it was the copper along his tongue or just a vague feeling, but he couldn't help but think something about his de-transformation was not quite right. "It's just, where could I go? I don't want to leave my mom, and I don't want to go live with Auntie, not after everything." A relative? He'd never heard Izuku mention an aunt, but he had only been living with his kid for about a month. "If you would be open to it, Hizashi and I would be willing to welcome you into our home, either permanently or until Inko Midoriya is able to properly take care of you. If not, we can arrange for a trusted—"
I'd be open to it. While I don't know you incredibly well, you have done a lot for me, and we have spent time together, and I know about your hero reputation in the underground. If it's about my safety, then living with you and Yamada is the best outcome, right?"
Shouta nodded, relaxing slightly, knowing that his kit would be safe and well taken care of living with him and Zashi. And when did his kit become his kit? Maybe his de-transition wasn't a whole nor as smooth as he assumed. He needs to get checked out soon, preferably by Recovery Girl. "We'd need to speak to your mother about this, but this will likely be a done deal. Is that okay with you, Green Bean? We don't want to force you into this. We just want to see you safe and well taken care of." Izuku nodded, wiping his cheeks with his arm, smiling softly.
"Yeah, it's not like I won't ever be able to see her. Even if I saw Mom once a week, that would be about as much as I would normally see her."
Shouta frowned softly because his kid was joking about barely seeing his mother, and it made something protective claw at his chest. The green net deserves so much better than what he got. Hopefully Shouta and Hizashi could do just that for him. Chapter 16. Inko, Babe, What the Frick-Frack? Summary. Inko is too tired to deal right now, and the hospital is just not even going to try and be subtle about anything at all. Shouta Aizawa is not a violent man. He always exercised reasonable force when apprehending villains and seldom enjoyed the act of hurting another. It was cruel and near villainous to enjoy inflicting pain and suffering, unless, of course, it was hero training. Watching his students groan and collapse was incredibly rewarding, especially if it was a good sign they were pushing themselves to be better. And he always had to stifle a laugh when the students panicked about a test he sprung on them, or that they had forgotten. That and pranks were the only time suffering was pleasant, in his opinion. However, Shouta was very close to punching a middle-aged woman right now out of sheer shock and protective wrath, because he had not expected her to be so blunt with her dismissal of her son. "I don't want him. If you want to keep him in, then you can. At least he will be taken care of with 2 pro heroes looking after him." Inko had deep bags under her dull, dark green eyes, and could barely summon the energy to sit upright to face her visitors, nursing her tea absently. She was almost apathetic, though Shouta could see the hints of relief in her fatigued gaze from across the table they sat around. "You don't want him?" Hizashi was sat beside him, reeling, blinking to try and dispel his shock, trying to not jump to judgment, and failing if the twitching of his fingers is any indication. "I love my boy, and I really tried to be a good mother to him, but—" She deflated, a heavy sigh pulling her down.
This world is not nice to the quirkless, nor anyone associated with them. His father left when he found out little Izuku was quirkless. She swirled her tea, watching the liquid slosh around. I have no friends, sans Mitsuki, but I only see her once in a blue moon. Everyone else looks down on me for giving birth to a quirkless child. It's a miracle I got the job at the hospital. And now he had the context. The tiredness seemed to look even worse. It made Inko world-weary rather than just in need of sleep. However, he knew she was playing up her innocence somewhat, because none of the cruelty or the hurt she had expressed to Izuku was in her voice now, just defeat and resignation. I love him, but I have no social life and I can barely pay for our bills. I can't keep up with this. With him. Tears welled in her eyes, and guilt flashed across her gaunt face. I'm glad someone cares for him and his cat enough to take them, because I don't know if I could have made it to his 18th birthday, she admitted, a soft smile on her face, as if Izuku were some 20-ton weight she had just shrinked and was tentatively reveling in her newfound freedom. We do, and we're glad you are happy with this situation, Miss Midoriya. Shouta bowed his head, keeping his face carefully blank. He could see this woman's position and understand her actions as she had explained them to him, but it didn't mean he liked them, believed them, nor respected them. I am. Now, is there anything he desperately wants of his? As Shouta walked into the hospital, Sashi having parted ways to go host his evening radio show, he noticed a head of green curls at the front of the office, talking to a man and taking a form from him. What is my problem child doing out of bed? He should be in bed rest for at least 3 more days, more like 5. Izuku, what are you doing? His kid jumped, turning to see what had spooked him, and relaxing at the sight of his former cat friend, though he still looked nervous. Oh, well, I was told I was being discharged today because I was taking up a bed that was needed by someone else. There is a whole ward full of spare beds, should they be needed. You should be monitored for a few more days, especially with as many severe injuries as you had. This could slow your recovery. It's barely been 2 days. Shota's shoulders squared, eyes narrowing as he considered why his kid had been told to leave early. He didn't like any of the options. The greenette shrunk into himself, trying to explain and justify the situation, but Shouta could see that his kid was just as confused and in need of rest as was expected, so Shouta brushed past him, taking care not to jostle Izuku, and caught the attention of the receptionist. Why is this patient being discharged early? He's still recovering from several traumatic injuries and should be observed for a few more days. The Noret had to hold back his quirk because, logically, having a hero shoot a quirk-enhanced death glare would not be conducive to a helpful conversation nor his end goal. The head doctor decided that Mr. Midoriya would be okay sent home so the bed could be utilized by another, more dire patient. Not glaring was becoming much, much harder. He is a dire patient. He almost died a few days ago and is still healing. The receptionist looked apologetic, but it was clear through subtle paralinguistic it was mostly a front he was performing, instead residing in strong agreement with the doctor. I'm sorry, but the doctor makes the calls on such things, and with his experience, there is no reason to question his decision. The blonde nodded with an air of finality to his tone, and turned to Midoriya. Please fill out the discharge form, sir. Shouta was seconds away from giving the receptionist a piece of his mind, because this was quirkus discrimination, grounds for suing, especially if he played his cards right. But before he could, the greenette ticked a few boxes and signed a few long lines at the bottom of the page, handing the form back to the receptionist with drooping eyes. Have a good day, Mr. Midoriya. Shouta reluctantly followed his kid out, watching the boy drag his feet slightly, muttering under his breath. He was discharged far too early. Something akin to a murderous rage flooded his senses, having been barely contained in a damn seconds prior, though he knew he was the picture of collected calm on the outside.
I'm gonna let loose the bloody rat on them. See how they fare after that. The world was more biased than he fully realized. In small tonal changes, in quick glances, he could see the disgust and unsettled air of the receptionist. It was a public service. The hospital and first responders should be unbiased to their patients, not subtly trying to not help them. He'd seen medics happier to treat villains than he'd seen them treating Izuku. Not for the first time, but Shouta let his mind wander to the idea of a fully quirkless hero and how he would shock and upset the world, how he would take headlines and take up space unapologetically, how he would prove that a quirk was worthless in heroism if one didn't have the drive to urge to protect, nor the intelligence to support them. He could rise and shine like a star, inspiring and proud, and he would declare, "I am here." And looking at Izuku slowly walk to the monstrously bright yellow car Zashi had brought for an April Fool's joke and had never returned, "Greetings," said Blonde softly, both smiling at each other and chatting happily. Shouta knew it would be glorious, and swore to prepare his kid for the potential day. A smile rose to Shota's face, and he let it. Alright everyone, that is the end for chapters 15 and 16 of Shouta Aizawa is Caught Horribly Underprepared. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you all soon. Bye!